what you're saying. Nani? Get out my business, okay?
Hey, how you doing? You were brought here probably by the thumbnail and the raging testosterone that I'm going to use to clickbait the hell out of people to click on this. But we will be talking about something that, once again, I want to repeat to the masses, in the grand scheme of things, does not matter. But because the GOP has ran out of jock material, such as Mr. Potato Heads, Dr. Seuss, or them censoring the Way of the South, what's the name of that racist movie from Disney? Because they don't have anything like that to talk about right now, this is their new thing. Critical race theory is an interesting thing for me. And it's only interesting in the fact that people seem to be terrified of it. People seem to have almost an allergic reaction to it, and it's brought upon by their insecurities to have competent conversations about race relations. If you really want to know if you're welcomed in a situation, talk about one of the three dirty deeds: politics, racism, and sex. Have one of those. If you can't have any of those conversations with somebody, they're not really that comfortable with you. So keep it PC for the purposes that you can. But Eric, I am a person who correlates critical race theory to be just history in my eyes. That's a very mundane, washed down version of it. What is your thoughts on critical race theory?
It's a fancy term that people probably shouldn't use because Heero and I had a discussion about this yesterday evening, and a lot of people on the right view this as something detrimental to the upcoming group of young people that are matriculating in the halls of institutions where they learn things. And the reason why they see it as detrimental because they believe that it is surreptitiously embedding a negative thought or idea into the minds of their children or loved ones about essentially them learning about racism is going to make them racist. I somewhat understand the premise, but the other part of me is like, dude, I have to live with certain realities every day. I'm not a victim. I make my own decisions. I'm accountable. But the thing is, I have to stop and take inventory of the things that I say and do because of the genetics that I did not have a say in. Okay. And some people, because when you're the ruling class and you're the majority, there's certain things that you innately don't have to consider. I'm a man of routine. I put things in the same place all the time so I don't forget. I do things on a routine because it means I'm less susceptible to making mistakes. When I step on the other side of the threshold of my door, there's a certain checklist that I have to run. Heero, you got to run the same checklist. Brandon, you got to run the same checklist. Tex probably got to run the same checklist. There's things that we innately do to protect ourselves from everybody else. So I do what I need to do to protect myself, but what I don't think people need to do is overreact to something. If you're a good person, be a good person. The majority of this crap has to do with the fact that some people mean to do good, some people want to do good, and then very few people just do good. Heero and I were talking about this. The crux of all this is Heero and I lead with the belief that a person should do the right thing if they know what the right thing is. And if we don't teach you what's wrong and be able to compare it with what's right, then you're going to more often than not choose wrong. Yeah, and ignorance is an excuse to do wrong. Willful ignorance dang sure ain't an excuse to do wrong. So the problem, another problem in our Heero, I want to know what you think, is that people look at what they already believe and they refuse to go over to the other side and see what the deal is and see where they meet in the middle. And I think that's what makes the identity booth what it is. How many times have y'all been on here and Heero and I have disagreed and met in the middle? because I would take the time to listen to his point. He would take the time to listen to my point. We'd figure out what we accept and don't. And then we meet in the middle and shake hands, say, I love you, and keep pushing. But this is why we keep having divides here. People don't want to deal with the real issues we have in the country. They don't want to have a conversation because now they're uncomfortable. Now they're defensive. And this is where we are. Heero, what would you say to that?
Well, and it speaks to the grand scheme of this. Ostensibly, the whole idea of learning about this critical race theory is about learning about it. It's just that. Learn about it before you make a judgment of it. So what you have is a bunch of people prejudging a situation. And how do we get here, right? So we have a situation where we know we know that at a college campus, kids can go to this campus, and whatever they decide their major to be, they will have to complete a list of core classes and then elective classes. This is going to be introduced as an elective class to people who are not majors in the field of either psychology, population data analysis, or something of that nature, some philosophy or something of that nature. So when you have people who on a college campus who have the freedom of choice to even decide if this is a course, the fact that this was a debate about this course being introduced to a college campus and then later on being introduced to high schoolers begs the question, why are you afraid of your kids learning something that could be beneficial to them as they grow up? Not something that should mold them or should lead the way, because I can tell you hundreds of kids are forced to take geometry and none of them are out here building buildings or becoming architects. That's not how learning works. You just use the information that's most pertinent and valuable to you. I'll never use Pythagorean theorem, but I know that shit like the back of my hand. Right? So it's about learning. But what me and Eric have just sat here and described to you, just take that into context, because me and Eric are on two different sides of the aisle on this, and we have a relative idea. I'm going to show you the most extreme version of this, and then I'm going to ask you to see, just compare what the most extreme version of this is, what their idea of it is.
I'm guessing you probably have. It has already insinuated itself into many institutions and is making rapid progress into others.
It's just gutter trash.
If it takes hold, it will completely change the very nature of America and the way you live. Critical race theory holds that the most important thing about you is your race.
It is gutter
The
trash.
color of your skin, that's who you are.
And this is the first lie. Critical race theory is not just about race. It's about how systemic racism affects people's races. It's about how social norms are derived from lack of knowledge or lack of understanding. It's not an internal bias you might have, but it's about how systems affect race. It's not about race affecting systems. It's about how systems affect race.
Not your behavior, not your values, not your environment. Your race.
And all of those are systems.
In critical race theory, you are a member of a minoritized racial group. Their term, not mine.
Passive aggressive.
You are a victim
bullshit.
of a system that is rigged against you, a system that doesn't want you to succeed. On the other hand, if your race is privileged, you're an exploiter, whether you intend to be or not.
This is also another extreme.
Critical race theory begins from the assumption that racism occurs in all interactions. To see how this works, consider this thought experiment. Imagine you own a shop and two customers enter at the same time, one white and one black. Who do you help first? If you help the black person first, critical race theory would say you did so because you don't trust black people to be left alone in your store.
No, it doesn't.
That's racist. If you help the white person first instead, critical race theory would say you did so because you think blacks are second-class citizens. That's racist too.
Okay, so we're going to stop here. The problem with this thought experiment is the fact that, remember, he said it himself in the beginning. It's about race. If two people walk into the shop and they both ask for help, your common knowledge is whoever got there first. That's a social norm that we have established already.
And so much so that we ask, who's next?
Exactly.
So we let the people look at each other and decide who's going to have enough manners to let the other one go first, since you guys relatively came in at the same time. It takes all the pressure off of me to pick you. And again, if you're getting this out of a book that's labeled critical race theory, we should put that book in the trash too. Because that's just not what actually occurs in nature. These hypothetical, whether it's in a critical race theory book, if this isn't a book, burn the book. If this is something that you made up as a little model to get to the point that no matter what happens, the all situations are going to be racist. There are some people, but they are the minority in an ideological group. You again, you're doing the same thing to these people that you're accusing them of doing. If you lump all of them into this bag and say, well, if you agree with critical race theory, then this is what you believe. No, that's not necessarily true. There's two things can exist in a vacuum. We've gotten so polarized as a society that two things can exist in the same vacuum. And we never allow both ideas to exist and give people the opportunity to decide what they're going to believe, one or the other or a mixture of the two. Why is it so difficult?
This is what he's doing right now is a bad faith argument. He's doing this to antagonize a situation that in our day-to-day activities, we have social norms to help rectify these issues before you can even think of any bias, because bias isn't needed in trying to figure out who's next. It's literally a decision of who walked in first. And just so everyone's clear, the white dude walked in first. So if I'm the dude at the register, I'm saying, sir, how can I help you? Because you were the first person walking in. And if the black person behind him says, why are you helping him first? My logical response is going to be because he walked in first, sir. But if you need something in a life or death situation, I'll ask him if he minds letting you go first. It's just mindless. Let's continue.
That's critical race theory.
Yeah.
It can find racism in anything, even if it has to read your mind to do it. Critical race theory is a uniquely American invention. Brewed up at Harvard Law School in the 70s, now part of the academic and
Why he got to be an asshole, bro?
Because like he has a very punchable face, and once again, we do not condone violence. On
we
the
don't
identity.
condone
We
violence.
don't condone. I just said I know. But I didn't say I want to punch him. I just said he has a punchable face. But he glazed over. I want you to keep in mind the Harvard Law School in the 70s. This is super important. Don't forget this. This is going to come back later to bite him in the ass. And this is, once again, further proof that people like him have an agenda where they're not part of telling the truth. What he is doing is literally the reason why critical race theory should exist. Because when you whitewash a situation like this, you leave us open to believing that Harvard did something wrong by introducing this brand of thinking. But when you see the people who brought this brand of thinking and the reason why they brought it, it makes a lot more sense. I don't know how much more time we want to waste on a fake university, Eric, but we can go to the juice of this story.
Yeah, man, we can get to the juice, but I think it's still good to paint a backdrop for
70s, now part of the academic and media mainstream.
We normally talk about on this channel, so we should give it a little time.
Yeah, okay, we'll let it go a little longer.
It is also uniquely un-American because it
and he said it's un-American. It literally was made in America. Okay.
rejects the core tenets of the American classically liberal Judeo-Christian value system. It turns the bedrock American idea upside down. Here it is in the words of Richard Delgado and Gene Stefanchik, two leading proponents. Critical race theory questions the very foundations of the liberal order, including equality theory, legal reasoning, Enlightenment rationalism, and the neutral principles of constitutional law. It does this because critical...
All right, I'm done. That's all I can handle. I'm sorry. It's just so bad. Like legal bearings, like all of that is just jargon. None of those words correlate to the fact of the matter that it is a form of education. It's just and just to show you guys how and before we go to the other video, I'm gonna just hit back on my browser real quick, and this might take forever to load. But I was convinced, like, because I wanted to find like a liberal talking point on this. Like I was like, man, who's making a fuss about this in the liberal world? And literally, when you type critical race theory into Google, it's all PragerU the Heritage Foundation, the Achievement, Minneapolis. Like, it's just a bunch of Charlie Kirk's a known white supremacist. He's number 5 on the list here. He's explaining just look at how this image looks. A white man is explaining to a black woman why critical race theory shouldn't matter to her. If there's ever if privilege was a picture, it'd be this. But the thing I love about white people is they come in all shapes and sizes. The black people, we're just awesome. But you know, once again, me and Eric, we're not racist, but we are assholes. But here's another white man talking about critical race theory, and his explanation of it is profound without being too harsh. You know what I mean?
I don't.
What critical race theory is to the best of my ability, but keep in mind, I'm a layperson who's going to do most of my research on Wikipedia and YouTube videos. Normally, I'd try to be a little more thorough, but it doesn't actually matter for our purposes what critical race theory is, but rather what people are pretending it is. And that sucks. It sucks that this discussion will take this turn, because there's really nothing about critical race theory that warrants the vitriolic reaction it gets. It's a series of normal, and in most cases, very common sense ideas to explain the dynamics of racism without relying on lazy answers like, I don't know, some people are just bad. Or like, everyone just naturally hates people who are different. Ideas that are just like, hey, racism's gonna happen, what are you gonna do about it? The people who teach it will now forever have to contend with dishonest hacks shouting over them to pretend as though they're claiming some shit like white people are evil or whatever. So the very least I can do is be a dishonest hack that defends them. Let's go super bare bones here. Critical theory is a philosophy or method of analyzing things that views the ways that social structures and power dynamics influence social problems more than individual beliefs or actions. Critical race theory is that method applied to race and racism. In this view, racism is not simply a product of individual bad actors, but is also reproduced unconsciously in systems and institutions. Racism is baked into how we do things in ways that we may not realize and may not even intend. I'll give you an example. Eurocentrism in history education. That's when you focus on Europe or the descendants of people from Europe in history and kind of ignore the rest of the world, where things also happened. An educator may not set out to center European history, but the tools and information available to them might treat that as the norm. Regardless of intent, this results in the history of people from other continents being neglected, thereby presenting their story as less important than that of whitos like myself, and less worthy of study.
And that's right
all
there.
It is.
That's it. Yeah.
Well, okay, obviously that's not all. I'm not.
That's it. That's it in a nutshell. It's just giving a like I said, the real history on a situation where no side is glorified. There's no opinion based on this. It's just giving you the facts of the situation. And if there's something that I've become innately aware of through this pandemic, is that when you give people facts that go against their beliefs, they will fight you to the ends of the earth. On their deathbed, gasping for their last breath, while denying they have COVID, they will fight you, bro. So like, when it comes straight down to it, critical race theory isn't about targeting white people and saying that you're bad for being white or you're an oppressor for being white. It's just saying, hey, and there's a great video, and I probably should have had that video queued up. There's a legislator in, I believe it was in Florida, who spoke about how it dawned on him as a 40-year-old man sitting in his chambers watching his black and brown and Hispanic people in Congress working and fighting for different bills and rights, and it dawned on him that he says, wow, they put in so much effort to get so little, but because he's a white, straight, tall man, he just has that much more edge. He talks about how because he's taller than everyone, he immediately draws presence and doesn't get bothered. No one's gonna mess with him. No one's gonna pick at him. No one's gonna backlash at him. like they would say a smaller person in the room. Because he's white, he's just given the benefit of that. He talks about it in candid feelings, and it just made me say, like, it was amazing to see. Eric, did you watch that video?
I did not watch it.
It's a TikTok that I sent, and there's a part of me that wants to go look for it. But it was amazing to see. But after hearing the two sides of the critical race theory, what now do we have? Do we have, like, okay, can we meet in the middle? Is there some of that? This is one of the rare occasions where, like, I have to just flat out say, if you have a problem with critical race theory, once again, it's because you have an innate misunderstanding about what it is, and it's your fear is not allowing you to be open about what the benefits of it is, because critical race theory actually helps everybody involved. It gives people a platform to talk about things that they might not be savvy to, and it gives people a platform who didn't have one in the first place. Critical race theory is one of those things that will further benefit us in the future. I don't know. What's your take on it?
I don't like forcing people to do things they don't want to do. Whether or not I think it's what's best for them, it's not something that I force. I would think it's good to force on people. People have to arrive at what's right on their own. If they can't, hopefully they will die off and not procreate. But in the meantime, can't focus on those people. You have to do the right thing. Honestly, go after the next generation. Be better for the next generation. Have more information, more understanding available for the next generation. As technology increases, so is the desire for people to understand and know. And that's one thing I can say about the generations behind me, is that they know, because they have access to ready data. They can find out whatever they want and think whatever they want. You sheltering them from that is not going to stop them from forming their own ideas, because they have everything in the palm of their hand. We've seen it even with the politicians.
Even to your point, giving them all the information will not benefit, could also be a detriment to them. Ultimately, giving them the opportunity is what you really want. Really want. So Eric's making a great point there.
And I, you know what I'll compare that to? I remember when I was in the 6th grade, I was riding with my mom to school. And, you know, people at church were getting baptized. And my mom's like, well, do you want to get baptized? I was like, do you want me to? She's like, Eric, people get to believe whatever it is they want. And if that's what you decide you want to believe, then you can go ahead and make that decision for yourself. But here's the information. You get to make the decision. And that's honestly what good parenting is. If you're a good parent, you'll present all the information, show why, and you have to be honest enough to say, here's why people on this side think this is beneficial. Here's why people on that side think this is beneficial. These are the pros, the cons that I see. Here's the information. You read it. What do you think? It's got to be that way. You got to give your kids, your loved ones, all the information, not what we see most people do, take a cursory look from one side, kind of what they already think and feel, and then they just do whatever. So, I mean, that's what I think, bro.
No, for sure. But remember, I said, keep in mind that that Harvard Law School professors and all that stuff, this is why that's important. We're going to look at just 2 out of the 7. If my computer ever gives it to me. Thank you, computer. Maybe. But those 2 Harvard law professors, or of the 7, they were civil rights activists. And remember how quickly he brushed over it and said that the amalgamation of all of this information are just a bunch of people trying to uproot and put America on its head and trying to disenfranchise American patriotic Judeo-Christian ways. These were civil rights people who did this. You know, Derek Albert Bell, a renowned professor, a renowned civil rights activist. You know, he was part of the law group who started to create this idea because he saw the inequities within our systems that were creating hostile environments for people of color. Kimberly Williams, Crenshaw, she was another activist on this matter. So these weren't just, these weren't just some radical people. These were people who had true reasons to want to try and change the system or point out the advantages of critical race theory. But this is all important because at Harvard, when this was all going down, this was a law school who was also facing this reality. And when you look at this picture, it then starts to make a lot more sense why these group of people decided that this was the place now to make this up. Because a lot of people conflate having education. This is a misconception that was brought upon through this, that, it's the Jim Bobs and the Billy Bob Thorntons of the South who are really, the racist. And that's not, educated men and women aren't racist. And this is the graduation photo that was taken on Harvard that they denied for years. This is a graduation photo from Harvard. So that whole notion of, there being no bias because they're educated, that's blown out of the water. And it makes it so much more important to have these conversations and bring them to light. Because of those people doing that work, we were able to have a candid conversation about why this is wrong and why this isn't the norm. There's a reason why they only do this now. and they got to be careful where they do this, because some folks will beat your ass. But it's important that we have these conversations so this isn't the norm. That's why critical race theory is important. So pictures like this can derive the shame it deserves, instead of silent praise from people who thought it was okay. But I mean, that's just our ideas. That's just our opinions on it. We'd love to hear you guys' deep dive into this.
Yep. Let us know what you're thinking.
But for what it's worth, I mean, Eric, I don't know, would you feel fine with your kid being taught critical race theory?
Nah, I want to be responsible for whatever goes in. I have no problem. Am I going to teach them that? No, I don't have a problem presenting both sides of the argument and saying, hey, this is all the information. You have to decide for yourself what is, what isn't, what you agree with, what you don't, what is right and what is wrong. And if you can make decisions based on, a sense of morality, that's what I'll feel more comfortable with as your parent.
But
I can
as
live
a parent,
with that.
you gotta give morality to your kids. You have a responsibility in installing that morality. So you could vehemently say, hey, people wearing hoods and hanging out in public and making other people of color uncomfortable is wrong. That's not something that's difficult to say.
That's nurturing, and again, it has to be, especially unfortunately in today's day and age, morality is subjective. That's why I have to present the information and say, this is what society has agreed upon is right or wrong. Now, me having the Bible as the foundation of my ideology, obviously I'm going to say this is what the Bible says is right or wrong. What are you going to do?
But it's so hard to find through the daily grind. Been working overtime, and I'm sleep deprived. Shorty on my line and we fuss and fight. Seems like every night. Don't care who's wrong or right. I hope the end is sight. Slow it down and we can catch the vibes.